long, long time ago, before history, before the Stone Age, back in the last interglacial age, which is about halfway from the time that Homo sapiens came to be on Earth until now, a phenomena occurred over the course of thousands of years. Geological experts are limited in knowing exactly how this geological wonder occurred. We can conclude that it must have been a period of shift away from the norm for the westerly winds, the tidal recede, and the flow of fresh sand coming in from the Sierra Mountains. One thing we do not know is why this massive shore deposit of sand occurred only here. We are certain of some facts though, so let's start there. This area is called the Antioch Sand Dunes. From at least the time of the turn of the century until just recently, man has been exploiting this natural phenomena. The abundance of clean, pure sand piled some 120 feet high made for some easy mining of the resource. Let's remember that sand is the third most utilized natural resource in the world. It is behind only air and water and is used in greater quantity than even oil. One might wonder why sand is not mined from the deserts where there are vast quantities. That sand is of no use to the construction industries as it is wind-blown into tiny little round rocks that are loosely held together. High-grade construction sand comes from the riverbeds, where big rocks upstream are broken down from being smashed against other rocks by powerful currents in rivers and streams. This sand has sharp edges, making it naturally bind to itself, making a perfect base product used in cements, bricks, and concrete, where permanent adhesion is a requirement. Sand has quickly become scarce in our world, while demand keeps growing. The mining of sand straight from riverbeds is becoming less and less feasible as nature only permits a thin layer to exist. Another obstacle for riverbed sand miners is that the thin layers also serve as the bottom tier of a sensitive food chain ecosystem. When you take away the sand, you take away the food source for nearly the entire aquamarine animal taxonomy. So in Antioch, where this resource was already manufactured and deposited, little was needed except to pile it in trains and trucks for a man to make a profit. Brickyards were quickly built near the Antioch sand dunes, where millions of the bricks were made to build the cities of Northern California, including San Francisco, where the entire city made of wood had burned to the ground in 1906. Families like Sardis and Stam made a name for themselves, harvesting the sand of the Antioch Dunes. The sand mining led the way for other industry to take foot in the region once Wilbur Avenue was paved, which caused even further destruction of the geological phenomena that had taken Mother Nature on 100,000 years to create. By the time the dunes finally became a protected refuge, it was nearly too late, as it was nearly gone, and what was left had been all but destroyed by man. What was once a giant sand dune that stretched for 5 miles had been reduced to a fraction of its former size, and remains far from the state that it was in just 100 years ago. In fact, the title that it bears today is a little bit misleading. The term wildlife covers a vast number of known animal species. The Dunes Refuge is the first and only refuge to protect life that appears nowhere else on the planet, and the first and only refuge to protect plants and insects. Plants and insects that call the dunes their home exclusively. Studies performed by the nearby UC Berkeley that began in 1929 identified 376 different taxa of species in the remarkable dunes. More recent studies show only 219 species, making lost some 157 species that are not expected to ever return. For some of those species, never returning is a certainty, since this was the only place in the world they could call home. It is heartbreaking to know that these samples, that were fortunately preserved by the university, are the only look we shall ever take at species of life on Earth. It's not really known exactly who is responsible for establishing the sand dunes as a refuge. Most likely it was mainly those associated with the UC Berkeley and perhaps a few other organizations. Those folks are truly heroes, and their attitudes towards nature are in stark contrast to Antioch's early visitors and inhabitants. Old bottles, cans, and other containers that are slow to biodegrade can be found in the sand dune area, which suggests early Antioch residents used the dunes as a trash dump. Even the appearance of Humphrey the Whale contributed to the demise of the dunes, as for a few days or weeks, visitors to the San Joaquin River shoreline, who came from all over California and the U.S. just to get a peek at the nationally known whale, Humphrey. Inadvertently, they trampled the fragile wildlife underfoot in their zeal and in great numbers. There are now 3 endangered species living in the Antioch Dunes. Those are the Antioch Dunes evening primrose, the Contra Costa wallflower, and of most concern to conservationists, is the Lang metalmark butterfly. The Lang depends on its host plant that grows in the area, the buckwheat, a plant facing its own struggle as other non-native vegetation has invaded the dunes and is choking out the buckwheat. The Lang metalmark is a beautiful butterfly. There is a lot to be done just to stabilize the dunes. Work towards restoration has just recently begun, and a full restoration may be impossible.